Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Just waiting on a few other folks to join. Let's give them maybe a minute or couple of minutes, Peyton, right?
Sounds good.
And we'll get started. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time from their busy schedules and join us for this virtual lunch and learn. So we appreciate everyone's time. Thank you. I think we can get started maybe, Peyton, right, with context and introductions and go from there.
Sounds good. So thank you everyone for coming to the virtual lunch and learn from IBM and Data Ninjas. My name's Peyton. I'm with Marketing and Communications Department. This is Mangesh. He's the CTO of Data Ninjas. We also have Rob, the VP of Sales from Data Ninjas, and then we have Caroline and Lawrence from IBM.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Peyton, let me know when you see the screen without any issues.
I can see it.
Okay. Do you see the slide deck?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started, folks. Again, my name is Mangesh. I'm the CDO here at Data Ninjas. Data Ninjas is a premier IBM business partner. We specialize in all things data, but specifically, AI orchestration, agent assistants, and overall data management that is required for you and organizations to adopt AI. So today's topic is obviously scaling HR without scaling headcount, right? I think a lot of it comes down to from a discussion standpoint, it comes down to what is HR excellence look like in 2025, right? It's obviously HR's mission is to help people thrive, and obviously there are a lot of different challenges for the most part. People who are struggling with ideas on how to scale really without adding headcount. I think this is the right session for you, right? So everybody has been talking about AI and why AI matters, for this mission. But I think, today we have proven that AI is capable of doing certain things. What those certain things are, how does it do it? So I'll be switching between, the slide deck as well as, some actual demos, right? Uh, but at the heart of it, why AI matters is really because we must adopt newer technologies that allow us to be more efficient with the tool set that we already have, essentially, right? So, as HR leaders kind of navigate these, landscape of whole bunch of different tools, that's number one. Whole bunch of different people and personality. That's the biggest, challenge. That's number two. And number three is the dynamics are changing so fast that w- HR leaders must adapt to the new paradigm, right? I think that's kind of the key part. So uh, in general, I think from a challenges perspective, today's HR organizations face numerous, right? I talked a little bit about fragmented tools, right? Because there are so many tools out there, from the likes of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint to the likes of Chat GPT, right? And everything in between, right? I mean, it's just, there are CRM systems, there are learning management systems, there are ERP systems, there are HCIM systems. It's almost like an alphabet soup, isn't it? So from that perspective, I think just having so many fragmented tool, it presents a significant challenge. Employee experience, obviously, is important because everybody wants, in this day and age where everything is available on their phones, right? We expect instant gratification almost, right? So why would our employees be any different? They would want answers quickly. They would want, resolution to their queries quickly. They would want to uh, perform actions quickly, right? And again, dealing with that in a very systematic way, where you have multiple systems, where you have multiple, core components in your HR department that include basically people, processes, and technology. It becomes, serving a proper employee experience becomes tough, right? Um, Again, in general, these statistics are obviously, uh, very well verified by IBM, right? So, almost 30% of HR leaders are planning to increase their HR tech budget in 2025. Um, Very interesting, dynamic here. Why is it that they are doing it? Mostly because they want to adopt better, newer, faster, simpler ways of performing a task utilizing a technology, right? Talent acquisition remains, again, almost like a time, pit, right? Because every time that you open a requisition, most HR leaders are aware of this, and anybody that has done any sort of recruitment is aware of this. That the moment you open a position, you get 300 resumes. Uh, some resumes are generally well formatted, but almost every single time it takes an HR leader a at least 15 to 30 minutes to understand, candidate, right? It basically just comes down to the process. Um, and, let's say you start with 100, resumes and the first 30 are just not a good match, right? You have already spent some time, doing this, going through the resumes and making sure that they are not a good fit, coming to that conclusion, making a decision that they are not a good fit. And so that adds, a significant overhead for the HR leaders and their departments as well, right? Change management, again, every time there is a change within the organization, whether it is a policy, whether it is a tool, whether it is, benefits or so on and so forth. All, every time there is a change, it takes, significant effort to organize for that change, to make sure that that change is well received within the organization, right? So again, internal and external pressures are there. Um, 96% of HR leaders plan to implement Gen AI. That's a astonishing statistic, right? It means that there is a significant need for Gen AI technology in the human resource, departments. Now, almost 75%, of HR leaders believe managers are overwhelmed, and I agree with that. Like I said, just looking at these, 4 or 5 different challenges, I have to navigate multiple tools, multiple technologies. I have to constantly succeed, in changing landscape, whether it is talent acquisition or change management. And oh, by the way, I have to do that all, with a keen eye on data privacy and security, right? So again, it's, I totally understand why these statistics are what they are today, right? So what? So essentially, what is the solution, right? So we'll talk a little bit about, um, you know, the different tools and how to use them and so on and so forth. But I think, from my perspective, HR departments have to adapt without really batting an eye or eyelid and play a key role in shaping the rest of the organization as well, right? And HR use cases are, some of the best use cases for generative AI uses. The reason for that is, there is a lot of a repetition, right? There is a lot of documents that you have to read through and understand and make sense of, even summarize in some cases, right? Um, so the repetitive plus the myriad, amounts of unstructured data make HR use cases very good candidates for adoption by, Gen AI tools and so on and so forth, right? So let's talk a little bit about how IBM transformed its own organization. um, it's really, you will be able to see this a little bit in terms of what IBM preaches, IBM practices, right? So I'm going to switch to the demo, right? I'm going to just go to the next slide that says, here is Ask HR. It's powered by IBM Watsonx Orchestrate. There are at least three different, core personas that are already engaged. This is a tool or an agent that is actually pre-built, and I'm going to show you a live demonstration of this a little bit, right? But the idea is employees can engage with HR agents, and there could be multitude of agents as well, right? They can execute transactions and HR query assistants. The managers are, again, they engage with HR agents as their primary entry point into HR. What does that mean? That means rather than going into three different systems as a manager, to do certain things, I am just going to go to an agent. And that agent will in turn go to the underlying three disparate systems for me. I can execute again, transact, query, and complex case assistance. I can work on those very easily because my primary mode becomes that simplified agent. And then again, I can look at, I can ask the same agents for more guidance as well, right? So let's switch into the actual client zero demo, right? Here we are. So this is a, I think a little bit of a subset of what IBM has already implemented, for its own internal use. The ROI on these things is, phenomenal, as you will see. So let's jump right into it. So what can Ask HR do, right? Let's see what Ask HR. So this is the agent, right? Now the product is IBM Watson X Orchestrate. Uh, as the name suggests, Orchestrate allows me to interact, depending on if I'm a user or I'm serving the solution. If I'm serving the solution, it allows me to build multiple agents that are very topic specific, that are action specific, but then I can easily navigate between those agents based on the context provided by the end user. And Watsonx Orchestrate allows me to do that. It essentially allows me to orchestrate multiple agents, right? And then from the user's perspective, it's the other way. User can interact with multiple agents without any, or assistants without any issues, right? So so let's look at this. Let's look at what is Ask HR. So right now these are seven or eight tasks. Well, there are a total of eight tasks essentially, right? So I can, think of these as more like sequences, if you will, right? So in order for me as a human being to find out what health plan options are available, right? I would have to do two things, and most HR leaders are very well aware of this. During the enrollment period, people, you have to get everybody on the call, make sure they understand what health plans are health plan options are available. Take questions. Everybody has a different situation, slightly different situation, and so on and so forth. So again, there is a lot of manual effort being spent on just surfacing the knowledge, right? That's the most important part. Um, and utilizing IBM Watsonx Orchestrate, it allows you to surface knowledge very easily, right? So let's look at this. Let's see how the experience is, right? So I'm going to say this the health plan options. Okay. So now, you will see that it has picked up four different plans, right? What it has effectively done is it has queried the backend system, whichever one is appropriate, to get this information. It summarized, to a certain extent, what the details you see here on the card, so to speak. An end user can actually navigate between these, three, four, different plans. Um, so let's say, you still have some questions about the PPO plan, right? Um, let's see what this one does, right? So again, their AI powered, agents can be finicky a little bit. That's not what I'm asking, right? Would you like to view your current compensation? That's not really what I asked for. I was asking for the PPO plan, but again, it didn't understand it, but it provided slightly relevant contextual option, right? And that option, basically says, okay, is this really what you meant, as opposed to I don't know what you mean, right? So that's the good advantage of having a AI powered agent is, it keeps the engagement going, right? So let me say no. Okay, let's see what those options are. It went into, the cyclical matter, but again, it's still trying to figure out what exactly am I asking. It has to be, specific to the knowledge that is built within the agent, right? What does that mean? That means, and I'm going to switch context here as well, right? So when I started off building, something like Ask HR, right? What did I do? Again, this is kind of, how I'm kind of showing you all behind the scenes look, right? So you start with, what is it? What is the knowledge that a particular agent should have, right? And a lot of these knowledge specific items have to be very well configured, right? To begin with. The second thing that you end up doing is you end up picking a particular model, right? Now that model may work very well with certain knowledge bases, certain tool sets. It may not work with certain other tool sets, right? And that's why I think it's important to understand that the agents are not infallible. The agents will make mistakes, but there are ways to curb these mistakes. We are still trying to make sure that the HR team in general is very well versed and is efficient, so to speak. But there are building blocks that we have to build essentially as we go along, right? So let's go back to the actual example. At least it went back to tell me more about PPA health plan option. It provided, because it was the second time that I asked, it provided a couple of other options, right? So let me see health plan recommendation. Let's see how that works, right? That should work, reasonably well, because it will specifically go through something about, the construct, so to speak, of what that health plan is. And it will try and match, the AI will try and match that to the employee that's actually doing this, right? So now it basically said, okay, can you, so in this case now I'm asking specifically, right? Which health plan, would you recommend for me? This was a generic statement, but now it's asking me specifically, right? I'm asking specifically. So let's say, again, I'm a 30-year-old, no dependents, 3 to 4 doctor visits uh, last year, right? The interesting part is this is, it everybody, any user essentially will respond to this completely differently, right? So that's kind of the second advantage of having, an AI infused agent that can infer what the user is saying and understand the question, understand the context, go back, look into, the backend, tools or databases or what have you, right? And come back and showcase here is what it can do, right? And give a cogent answer. That's very important. So now, based on these, so people may say, I am 30 years old. I do not have dependents. I am not married. Again, many people will say different things, right? How they phrase answers will be entirely different. But anyways, based on these inputs, it actually looked at my profile, and then it recommended a specific plan, right? So how does this work, right? It's how I talked about having essentially tools, under behind the scenes, but you have an agent that can perform 6 to 7 actions. There is absolutely no best practice other than to keep the number of actions that an agent can perform to a minimum. I like, personally, I like agents that are built for purpose, because then you can track, how they do, how often do they do this work, and so on and so forth. In other words, the business intelligence around who the usage and all of the characteristics, all the analytics is a lot easier to capture and store and analyze if you have purpose-built agents, right? So you can look at multiple different things, right? Uh, let me ask it. I'm just gonna ask a slightly different way. Let's see what it does, right? Okay. It did find, it did find that I am working in USA. Based on that location, it found that these are the, essentially, so this, um, all these data, the holiday and the actual date, right? It has to be stored in some, calendar or some system or some database, right? Uh, but as an agent, now I don't have to go look at a PowerPoint slide that is stored on, some network drive that can, that has this information, right? The other thing is, is Memorial Day a holiday or MLK Day a holiday for us or something else, right? Again, there are always one or two, dates in the calendar that people have questions about. Is this a, especially in new hires, right, who haven't been with the company long enough, they will always have this question, and they reach out to HR. Then HR has to answer that. Again, manual labor reduction is significant in this case because the employee is interacting with an agent. Agent never tires. It's always available, right? So, so going back to what we did, right? If you think about, there are three different things that we did. I asked, as an employee, I looked at what options I have for health plans. I also asked based on, a series of inputs. I asked the agent to recommend me. So again, the recommended best action or best plan, so to speak, is here. And then again, I can perform any other action, right? So uh, each of these actions that you see within the agent is really performed by a combination of AI, right? And skills or tool sets. So, so for example, the benefits plan or the health plans will be available to me through a series of these, tools essentially, right? I want to go get the best plans the health plans that we offer to our employees from SAP Success Factors. It could be any other. It could be Workday. It could be Oracle. It could be any other things, right? I can, then further down the line, then I'll have to get current compensation details, right? I'll have to get payslip details and so on and so forth, right? Again, I'm, thinking about how how humans do work. We have to make sure that these agents and the AI, they go hand in hand, right? It's almost like teaching a completely novice, machine. Here is how to do things, and that's how you do, step by step, right? You break the actions into a sequence of steps. Each step has to be explained, but once it's built, it will continue to perform that day in and day out, right? So that's, part of it is building an agent, part of it is building the AI skill, part of it is, integrating underlying systems, the existing systems that you may already have. And that's a big benefit of utilizing a product like Orchestrate, right? So I'm going to switch to the slide deck now. So, we kind of saw what the employees could do. We saw what the managers could do. Again, the HR agents and, the low value manual work instead of focusing on coaching, that's very, very true, right? If I'm not answering queries, is today a holiday or is tomorrow a holiday, I can actually work on helping an employee succeed, basically, right? So process automation is very, very important. This goes down to how efficient are we going to become as an organization, right? We want to be the best version of ourselves, and today's tools have enabled us to be that, right? So process automation again is very important. So when you start thinking about, what can the agent do for me, just think about how many tasks, how many yearly interactions I have. I mean, for a company with, 1,000 or so employees, I bet that number is in millions, right? If not tens of millions, it's, maybe in low millions, right? M- Maybe it's 100,000. Even then, hundreds of thousands. Even then, automating some of these processes has huge benefit. What that also does is it provides the employees with a much experience, right? And so generally the employee satisfaction gets reflected, at least, in my experience in the last 25, 30 years of working in this industry is, people want answers again very quickly. They want, attention. They want to understand what path they will have in terms of getting promotions and so on and so forth. What do they need to do, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, those experiences when you have uh, when you have tools like, these agents and assistants, especially when they are AI infused, they're not dumb. They understand context. They don't, uh, overstep their boundaries either, right? But essentially, with those tools, you will give much better employee experience, right? And obviously, reduction of operational cost is huge, right? This, like I said, it's, these agents or assistants never never tire, right? So what typical use cases can you build, right? From my perspective, I think AI is definitely becoming better. Um, the Gen AI, the large language models, are definitely becoming better. They cannot solve every single problem that we have. That's 100% sure, right? There are limitations. The most important one is because this is an enterprise setting. You don't want an open source like tool like Chat GPT, which you don't know where it learned that information, how accurate that information is, and more importantly, is this large language model really giving me the information, or is it overconfident? There is a term for that overconfidence, when large language models become overconfidence, it's called hallucinations. They hallucinate. They think that they have the information, but they don't, right? So it's important to set the, business context, right? And make sure that, when you are servicing, these employees, which are effectively your customers, that there is thorough understanding of the processes, thorough understanding of the knowledge base, and some guardrails around how AI behaves, right? But even with all of that, I think AI is incredibly powerful when it comes to searching and extracting data from documents, right? So summarizing documents and conversations. They are incredibly powerful when you want them to generate content. They are, AI is very powerful when it comes to automating processes, right? So, so we saw the general, querying mechanism of assistants and agents. Now let's look at a little bit, behind the scene again, right? What summarization. So I have this another demo, right? So let's look at in a typical HR type of a scenario, right? Um, what we want to do is we want to, again, this is set up for a specific demo, but if you have access to an enterprise AI that allows you to generate, right, specific job descriptions essentially. So let's use that, right? These are kind of the instructions that we are we are giving to the AI, right? And again, just having a tool like this can make my life as a recruiter a lot easier, right? Now, I as a recruiter, as an enterprise recruiter, I must have faith in what the AI generates for me, right? So most of the work that AI should do should be reliable. And that's the key part, right? So now I just have this basic company, this, that, here's the compensation, all of this stuff. Now let's ask it to generate the actual job description for me, right? So it took a lot smaller input, so to speak. This is typically how you would do it. You would have a basic of template essentially for the job requisition, right? But the long form description you may or may not have. This takes time. So look at this. It very quickly it generated everything for me that looks like a very professionally written job description, right? Again, it's just a matter of providing the input and utilizing the output, obviously after verification, right? So this is another use case that you will see, specifically with AI, that Gen AI, it's incredibly powerful. It does a lot of work, and it is built, essentially all of the IBM products are built with enterprises in mind. So you're not utilizing Chat GPT and everything that's open, and this becomes part of the data, right? Um, or the input becomes part of the data that the model learns from in the future. So again, a lot of different ways of looking at this, but this was another use case, right, that we talked about. So let me switch to this part, right, the process automation part. And again, repetitive work gets transferred over to AI again in an enterprise context, right? So um, so let's again go back into the slide deck a little bit, right? How do AI agents, uh, how do they do this, right? I talked a little bit about, you know, uh, what exactly are AI agents, right? And I showed you all the underlying theme of, orchestrate and how you can assemble or build an AI agent, right? So, but this, I think, this graphic really puts it in succinct way, right? So agents, what are they, right? They typically use a conversational UI, or there is a business process that inputs data into the agent, right? The agents essentially plan, execute, and they reflect. And that's the beauty of it, right? They actually see, that based on this input, or a specific wording in the input, I have to execute something. That's the plan part. Then it actually executes that action, right? And then once it gets the data back, it reflects and thinks before it answers whether the data that I got is right, the answer that I got is right or not. And if it's not, then it has to decide what follow-up question or clarifying question it can ask, right? And then it executes, the output, so to speak, as well, right, for you. Uh, Typically, agents have short-term and long-term memories, right? And this you will see depending on, you might have seen this already with ChatGPT. There are ways of making sure that it can recall, and this is true for, most large language models. It can recall a search or a query that you did, you know, 10 days back, right? Same thing with these agents. It's typically configurable. If it is configured to have a short-term as well as long-term memory, then it becomes a lot easier if the human user has forgotten answer and asks the same question. The AI agent doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. It knows that it has the question. It has already answered the question in the past, and it'll just give you the results, right? Um, Tools, what do they do, right? They can execute code. They can do some web research. You can do documentation, and then there are utility agents, behind the scene as well, right? Like I mentioned, IBM Orchestrate is very powerful. It allows you to orchestrate multiple agents, build multiple agents, and treat these agents like you know uh, building blocks, essentially, Legos, if you will, and you stack these things on top of each other to get the shape that you want. So I'm going to switch back to the demo part a little bit, right? Um, and walk you all through, again, so list health plan options or recommend a health plan, benefit enrollment information, transfer an employee. Let me see, let's try this. I have never tried this transfer an employee option, so I'm very curious what it'll allow me to do or not. Hmm. So again, I started with transfer an employee. It says, would you like to transfer one of your employees to a new manager? Answer is yes. So now it will ask me to look for a specific employee. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of John, Jane, Richard, all those in this instance. But let's say James Doe. You have selected James Doe. Again, it asks, is this the right one? Would you like to change it? And so on and so forth, because you want to build trust in that, in that process. Let me transfer James Doe to Robert Brown. Select a different employee, cancel this process. Again, back out is always good, right? This is a very standard, best practice, so to speak. um, Done, right? so so first and foremost, what did we do, right? In this example, we started off with um, s- telling the AI agent, I would like to transfer an agent, transfer an employee to a new manager. It confirmed. It went to the database. It figured out that I have 7 or 8 of these direct reports. One of them is James Doe. I said, let me transfer this employee to a new manager. It asked me again from a set of action perspective, right? It went and figured out a list of managers that I could potentially transfer this employee to. And then once I picked the right manager, it transferred. What did it do, right? That means it changed, went into the backend, and it made all of the necessary adjustments or actions to reflect that this employee James Doe now reports to Robert Brown. And depending on whatever it's HCM, human capital management, or tool set, or if there are multiple tool sets that are required to effect this action, what Cenex Orchestrate did all of that behind the scene. This agent did all of that behind the scene, and it's done, right? It's very simple. Typically you would have to go to perhaps one system to go get the employees, then another system to get all the managers, or maybe it's the same, but maybe it's not, right? And then the transfer itself can take many different forms, right? So so that's the advantage of having that information. So when you look at it, today, this is kind of the time distribution that we see most of the time, right? There is a self-service platform, maybe 25%, maybe 20% of between self-service and automated process. And then this is the manual effort, right? Where most of the time is 50 to 60%, maybe even 70% time gets into the physical manual actions. That's today, but in tomorrow's world, you will have more time for self-service, more time for automated processes, more time to do the strategy and analysis, and then more importantly, you can squeeze into some few other things like enterprise initiatives and squads and so on and so forth, right? So um, again, that's very common. We see this um, i- day to day. We have had several conversations with multiple HR leaders already, right? And they all have said, yes, there is, they see a value in adopting to some of these. We have started, some proof of concepts for a couple of, IBM customers slash prospects here as well, right? And again, your journey will be unique. Your journey will take a different form, um, essentially as you go along. But the result would be spectacular, right? Because the tool set is here already. And again, one of the key things is I had mentioned early on. AI is really good at solving repetitive but low intelligence, so to speak, right? Uh, Tasks. You know, we as humans are capable of doing a lot more. Summarizing a document, we can do that, in our sleep probably. But for AI, that's a big deal. And today's AI is, they're doing that reasonably well. So I'm going to switch again back to the demo mode, right? I really wanted to show you all the resume search capabilities, right? So you can look at each resume. There are like 4 or 5 resumes here, uh, and what it'll do is it read all of the you know data or document or words in the resume, and it figured out it created a nice little summary for me, right? Um, just having this is huge because now you can, the 300 resumes that I had talked about, you can go through that in a matter of minutes because of an agent, right? Again, you can easily have an agent go through, hey, go to this, folder, look at all of the resumes in this folder and generate summaries, right? That could be your agent, and you call that agent through the same, UI, very conversational UI, a chat, right? And the agent will perform that work for you, right? Essentially, and these, summarization type of, use cases themselves will save a ton of time. So again, lots and lots of use cases as you start digging into this, journey in this process. But I kind of, mentioned Watsonx Orchestrate as a tool. There are obviously few required tools in this ecosystem, right? Especially in the agent and, assistant ecosystem. Obviously you want, to have a document repository. Um, because generally speaking, that will come into play specifically for all of the HR cases. I'm sure there will be a database or two, where you can store meaningful information and that is extracted from these documents. So that's again very easy to integrate all of these tools. Excuse me. You can integrate with these, tools with a lot easier with IBM, right? Especially Orchestrate and Watsonx.ai. But the heart of this is Watsonx.ai. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Watsonx.ai is really, it allows you to interact with the Gen AI in a more meaningful fashion, right? It allows you to train the Gen AI. And so we'll cover those topics in the subsequent lunch and learns and webinars. Peyton, are there any, do you see any questions? I think it's about time we open it up to questions, right?
Yep. How can I secure my assistant or agent?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So most of the interactions, so I'm going to switch to the demo mode again, right? Um, so most of the interactions that happen typically in a agentic application or a chat application like this will happen over HTTPS, right? So that protocol is secure. Connections from IBM Orchestrate, Watsonx Orchestrate to the databases, those can be fully secured. Connections from Orchestrate to underlying systems can be fully secured. Connections from, Orchestrate to the AI model can be fully secured, right? So all of these tools, all of the entire platform is built with enterprise security in mind, right? So you make sure that the PII, the private information stays private. Instance of the large language model that you work with, and if you train one, you are essentially recreating another large language model, purpose built, for your consumption, trained on your data that you have deployed in a secure and private space as well, right? So everything, end to end can be easily secured. It's a great question. Any other question, Peyton, you see?
So you mentioned how they hallucinated. How can you prevent them from hallucinating?
Yeah, so we saw that a little bit in the, interactions here, right? Instead of going out and looking at some random information on the web for health plan recommendation, or when I asked, tell me more about the PPO health plan option, right? Uh, it actually asked the clarifying question. You will see that, if you compare this with any of the other, like, Chat GPT or what have you, it will give you an answer that it doesn't even understand, right? uh, but it has some information, about PPO health plan in general, right? And it'll go get that answer and it'll show it to you. In this instance, we told, this particular model has been told to ask clarifying questions. And those clarifying questions uh, are based on essentially the confidence that it has in the answer, right? As I had mentioned, these models or these agents, right? They plan, they execute, they reflect, and that reflection, you can make the confidence level part of that reflection, right? If it is really confident that it has found the right answer, then and then only it'll, you know, uh, answer it. Otherwise, it'll stay mum or it'll ask clarifying questions. So, great question. Anything else, Peyton?
Um, the last question is, can this program be used for any type of company?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So, when you say any type of company, it can be used for not only any type of company, it can be used for any type of function as well, right? So think about how, humans do work, how humans do repetitive work. So we see this in a wide variety of different areas, right? In not just health, HR, but finance as well, right? Operations, sales, right? Any of these, functional or operational areas, you can see this, this particular set of tools be very, very effective in making employees, regardless of their job function, making those employees very efficient because, they're not doing those repetitive tasks anymore, right? So awesome. Sounds great. I think we are just about at the top of the hour and that we had scheduled. So again, I want to, thank everybody for joining. We really appreciate it. Our team will follow up with you and make sure that we, share the details of the lunch voucher. I think that's, one of the questions that we typically get, Peyton, right? So, so we'll definitely have that, and we'll kind of go from there. We appreciate everybody's time. Um, okay, thanks, thanks all. Thank you, Peyton.
Thank you.